What is up, Knicks fans? Welcome back to yet another episode of Fireside Knicks with your hosts Dylan and Davin. And last night, Jalen Brunson put on a magnificent performance against the Philadelphia 76ers with 38 points in the overtime win. And it's really been kind of a continuation of a very good stretch for Jalen Brunson, and it seems like he is finally back to playing in that all-NBA level form. He has now scored 30-plus points in 3 consecutive games, which includes a 44-point explosion against the Milwaukee Bucks in only 29 minutes, which was a historic performance. Just a phenomenal game from him right there. It's been a great week for him, which is really what he needed after he was kind of slumping for a little bit, along with the rest of the team. You know, he had that weird shooting slump where he was shooting like under 30% from 3 over a 10-game stretch. It was really strange, something we didn't really see very often from Jalen Brunson. Now we're back to seeing him play like an All-NBA player, and that's what we want to see. So Davin, first off, tell me how you're doing, and secondly, what have you really noticed about Jalen Brunson in these past few games? Because he's looking like the guy from last year once again.
Doing great, man, as always. Thank you for asking. And you said it just perfectly. Looking like the guy from last season once again. Jalen Brunson, prolific 37 points per game over his last 3 games. 58% from the field, 38% from 3. He's at a high volume score that he's supposed to be. That's what he's been. The whole situation with Jalen Brunson this season, really, you're trying to have Mikal Bridges and Karl-Anthony Towns kind of into the rotation. He's been kind of like, kind of relaxed a little bit, being more of a playmaker, really extending the game more than we're used to seeing him do. And that's something he's kind of adjusted to himself, being a playmaker more than Brunson is. And we knew he could do it, but to the excessive amount that he's been doing it so consistently, so well now, it's just kind of the second nature for him. But it was a little bit of a growing pain there a little bit with Jalen Brunson. That's just kind of how things work with a new lineup, new rotation. And these guys, I think, like I said the other episode, these guys, I believe, incentivized to have different positions. Like, they have contracts. They got to get their shots. They got to get paid. They got things they have to do. Everyone has not ego-based, but everyone has their own incentives going on here. So things like that just kind of play nature. And Jalen Brunson has been a great leader in making sure that everyone kind of falls in line. You know what I mean? Behind Tom Thibodeau and whatever scheme they have position. So, and he's the first lead by example. I understand Jalen Brunson's not known as the strongest defender, but at the same time, when you have this guy being the one that's making the hustle plays and getting those extra steals and being those extra guy on defense, is going to just up the ceiling really and up the floor for the New York Knicks. And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, and I want to point something out too, because a lot of people have been saying that Jalen Brunson is a ball hog and that he's, costing us games. And sure, maybe during that little rough stretch he did have some moments where I would maybe have made different decisions than he made on the court. But at the same time, Jalen Brunson is the type of player who does this. He's a guy who is great in one-on-one situations, who's great when you get a defender put on an island. And not for nothing too, but in a late game situation, I think you want him to have the ball. I do. I think you want him to be the one handling the rock and trying to score. I understand you have different options out here now. It's a different team than last year. He doesn't necessarily have to carry every single night, but when the team was slumping really bad, and even when Brunson was slumping, we saw the outcomes. They were losing a lot more games. When Brunson has started to take over these past couple games, they've been winning. Brunson scored 44 against the Bucks, and they destroyed them. Brunson against Detroit, he had 31 and 11, and really they should have won that game, but just some really bad turnovers from Karl-Anthony Towns is really what kind of cost them that game, right? So I wouldn't even blame Jalen Brunson for that one. He was wielding their way to the win, and Mikal Bridges, of course, had a great game against Detroit as well. And then yesterday against Philadelphia, Towns doesn't even play. He's out. He's not out with the thumb issue. Thankfully, it's nothing too serious. He can still play through the bone chip. Thank God, because that would have really sucked if we were going to miss Towns for a while. But regardless of that, last night he put up 38 points, went absolutely crazy in the second half. He didn't even sit in the second half, by the way, and the overtime period. He played that entire stretch, and the Knicks won the game. Yes, they did blow a double-digit lead. I acknowledge that. I understand that they kind of looked really, really bad in the third quarter. But really, they don't win that game if Brunson doesn't take over the game down the stretch. They don't. And quite frankly, too, for people that are saying Brunson's a ball hog and all that stuff, look at the guys around him. The guys around him are off-ball specialists. They're not exactly guys that are, specialty with the ball in their hands. Maybe Karl-Anthony Towns is, a pretty all-around guy, and I know Mikal Bridges can handle the rock too, but are you really expecting OG Anunoby and Josh Hart to take over offenses? No, you're not expecting those two to do that. And when Towns isn't even playing yesterday, you have another guy who you really can't trust to just put the ball in their hands. Jericho Sims got the start. And he didn't even play that bad yesterday. I'll give Jericho Sims his flowers. He was actually pretty decent yesterday. 8 points and 7 rebounds in the start, and he actually played very good defense. So I can give him credit for that. But other than that, my point here is, Brunson is surrounded by guys that are off-ball specialists, and it's not like he can just give the ball to the guy next to him and they're going to run the offense the same way. No, the offense runs through Jalen Brunson. You want your offense running through your main guy. So I understand there are times where he's holding the ball too long, and maybe he could pass out of a shot or something like that. I understand. I'm not saying Brunson is a perfect player. He has his flaws. Every player has his flaws. I'm sure Brunson would be one of the first guys to tell you that. But if you also look at the numbers, Brunson's playmaking numbers are up. They are up by a lot. He's averaging 7.5 assists per game, which is a career high for Brunson, and is also 11th in the NBA. So he is actually being a really good playmaker. He's averaging about 2 turnovers per game, which yeah, I want to see turnovers not be so frequent, but at the same time, it's not like it's that high of a figure when you're averaging that many assists. The turnovers are going to happen when you're handling the rock as much as he is. So he's actually been a pretty efficient playmaker while still maintaining the high level scoring. He had that little weird stretch where he wasn't scoring a whole bunch, but on the season, he's averaging 26 points per game on great efficiency. I mean, really, he should be on track to not only make the All-Star team again for the second straight year, but he should be a starter. He and Karl-Anthony Towns both deserve to be All-Star starters. I think the Knicks should have 2 starters in the All-Star game. Of course, at the end of the day, the All-Star game is just a popularity contest in my eyes, so if he's not a starter, he's not a starter. I really don't care that much at the end of the day, because I know he's going to make the All-Star team one way or the other. At the end of the day, I care about winning a championship this year and playoff success, and I'm sure the Knicks guys also agree with that. But moving on to the next point, you mentioned the egos thing, and I wanted to briefly touch on that. Josh Hart had said that thing a couple days ago, after they lost to Detroit, that some players have egos or individual agendas. He didn't exactly say who, but at first maybe people kind of brushed it off. It's just like, oh, it's just Josh Hart being Josh Hart. But then Ian Begley came out yesterday saying it doesn't seem like he was really joking about that. And I want to kind of ask you about that. Do you think he could have been directing that towards any sort of player, or even maybe perhaps Brunson or OG Anunoby, somebody on the court? Do you think Hart's comments were directed at anybody?
So yeah, I saw that Begley report. I also saw this morning they were talking about Tibbs came out talking to Josh Hart, talking about he needs to watch film and not be speaking out and outing teammates and stuff like that. So it's just kind of an internal battle right now, I think, going on. Just I don't think anything too serious. At the same time, it's frustrating. Some of the losses they've had have been frustrating. I'm sure that this just gets to these guys. These guys have expectations upon themselves, and I believe that situations like ego-driven, in my opinion, I think it's more incentive. I don't think it's ego-driven. I think it's more incentivized. There are a lot of these are all stars. We're talking about it right now. We have Karl-Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, you got Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby. All these guys have things they want. Like OG Anunoby, he wants more shots. He talked about that before he signed his contract. He wanted to come and have a larger offensive role. That's something that's incentivized in his contract, and that's an example of that. Something like that. I wouldn't say that's just being so egotistical. I think it's more like I said, these guys have incentives that they have to meet or they want to meet for higher contract stakes, and that's just the way the business works. And I think that's why he says watch film. Tom Thibodeau said that about Josh Hart, and I don't think it's directed towards anyone in particular, just frustration. And Josh Hart, like you said, one of those things that Josh Hart just says, just one of those Josh Hart quotes. At the same time, we'll be actually paying more attention to things like that. You know what I mean? How the players act on the bench, how they interact, body language. We know the body language experts of last season were having their whole entire ordeal for their reasons, but this is a different season. These are different reasons, and we have higher expectations. So I'm not going to be too mad if these guys come out and they start letting us know what's really going on behind the scenes per se. But as long as these guys can string together wins, I don't think on the second half of the season, second stretch, this kind of will just dissipate. No one will be talking about this after a few weeks' time. As long as they're stringing together wins, and I think consistent wins and legitimate things that make us believe in the Knicks. You know what I mean? Really, I can't think of that right now. But yeah, that's what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, and I want to tie it back to Brunson a little bit because obviously, Brunson's not the one who said those comments, of course, about the ego stuff. But with Brunson being the captain and the team leader, of this Knicks team, I wonder if he should be kind of, stepping in a little bit, not letting guys come out and say stuff like that and make sure that the guys are bonding well together. Brunson, of course, is not like a big guy. He's not like a LeBron James or anything like that. But this is the guy who's named the captain. He's expected to be the leader of this team. I think he's done a great job leading this team. They're off to their best 42 game start in over a decade. So I mean, he's clearly doing the right things in terms of on the court. But off the court, I think it's also partially his job to make sure the guys are bonding well together. Of course, it's not all his responsibility because he's not living with these guys. He's not, interacting with all of these guys off the court. So I'm not putting it all on him. But at the same time, I feel like, as a leader and as a captain, you should make sure that your team is getting along well. You should make sure your team is not, butting heads with each other, not being at odds with one another. I'm not saying that they are at odds with one another because I mean, I think there are definitely worse situations out there currently. Cough cough, Jimmy Butler. I think that is a much worse situation than right now what the Knicks are dealing with. But regardless of that, I think as a leader with Brunson, I think maybe he should kind of just make sure the team is bonding well together, make sure they're getting along. Of course, Brunson we know gets along with Josh Hart really well. He's really good friends with him. It seems like he's getting along with Karl Anthony Towns very well. All the other guys as well, which is great to see. I'm not saying that anybody exactly hates each other on this Knicks team. I think everyone does get along to an extent, but I think at the same time, I think there's kind of a slight disconnect on the court, especially in terms of what the goals are, which is a little bit concerning. If Josh Hart is coming out and saying that players are playing with egos and that there's individual agendas, that can kind of fuel some other guys a little bit and kind of be like, oh, so you think I only care about myself rather than the team? You know what I mean? I know people have been speculating who exactly Hart could have been referring to. I've seen a lot of people say he might have been talking about OG Anunoby. I've seen people say he might be talking about Mikal Bridges. I don't really know, nor do I really care that much who he's talking about because I don't think that's something that you should be saying publicly. And as a leader in Brunson, I think you should be one kind of making sure that that's not happening, that guys are not coming out saying things like that. I understand Josh Hart is a pretty animated guy. He's gonna come out and say whatever he wants because he doesn't really care what the media thinks about him, and I respect him for that. I think it's good that you have a open player, a guy who is willing to kind of just speak his mind and not shy away from the media. I think that's a good thing. But at the same time, you don't want to say something that other guys can, take the wrong way, and then it becomes a distraction. And you really do not want it to be a distraction this year when you have bigger goals in mind. You're not just trying to reach the playoffs. You're not just trying to reach the second round. No, you're trying to win the championship this year. You have much bigger aspirations than you did a year ago. You know what I mean? So I kind of want to ask you, do you think Brunson is a little bit responsible for kind of the way the team is bonding? I'm not saying that it's fully on him. I don't think it's fully on him at all, but I kind of want your input on that. Where do you think he kind of falls in situations like that where players seem like they might not be getting along as well as many might have thought?
I believe Brunson's just a different kind of guy, more of a lead by example kind of guy, and that reminds me of the guy in the Bay, Stephen Curry in a way. Stephen Curry's a lead by example kind of guy. We can't really see, like I say, reprimand these guys. You know who Steph Curry's dealing with on that team. You got Draymond Green and the former Klay Thompson. These guys are going to say what they want to the media the way they want to say it. The New York Knicks, I'm not saying Jalen Brunson is exactly like Curry in that sense, but at the same time, regarding he's going to lead by example on the floor. He's going to be the consummate professional all the time when he's the one leading on the way. He's going to show his time in the media, then on the floor, he's going to be the consummate professional. And that's just the way Steph Curry carries himself. He's not going to control guys and try to be the guy that's to control the narrative all the time. Just try to, keep these guys, under his string and, on a tight leash or something like that. So I just don't think Jalen Brunson's that kind of guy. At the same time, I'm sure that these are conversations held, like Tom Thibodeau said to the media. He came out to the media to say that what he said about Josh Hart. I'm sure conversations were had behind the scenes about these situations being had. And that's just simple as that. These are some in-house conversations that shouldn't be getting out. Like you said, the media should not be hearing about this. I was really not high on Quentin Grimes when he came out to the media saying he didn't know his position when he was with the Knicks. And he was lost in his skin. I was like, you shouldn't be saying that to the media, this and that. And then he ends up getting traded. Now, Josh Hart is kind of leveraging himself because he understands his position. He understands his importance to this team. And so him coming out to the media saying something like that, he's been saying, could be detrimental to someone else, but it's not going to be detrimental to Josh Hart because, and in a second, you let that guy go, 29 other teams are going to try to sign the guy. So it's not like this is just a role player we're talking about here. This is Josh Hart, who had an amazing game yesterday, by the way. So things like that, like I said, going back to string together wins, that'll be very important here, and everyone's going to forget about this. Jalen Brunson, still a consummate professional, an amazing leader. The GMs voted him one of the top 5 leaders in the NBA for a reason. But at the same time, you can't keep all these guys on the leash, and they try the best they can with the egos involved.
Yeah, and like I said, again, it's not all Brunson's responsibility for antics like that because at the end of the day, Brunson can't control what Josh Hart is saying to the media, nor can he control what anyone else is saying to the media. At the end of the day, they're all human. They all are allowed to feel whatever they want to feel. Obviously, you don't want any distractions to be had. You don't want to be in the same situation that the Miami Heat are in with Jimmy Butler, as I alluded to before, because we all know how that situation is going down, and you don't want players to quit on you or players to turn against you or, you're not getting along with guys that you thought you were getting along with. You don't want any of that, especially when you have, like I said, big title aspirations. But, at the end of the day, I am confident that Jalen Brunson can help lead this team and make sure that that whole situation doesn't become a distraction. I am confident in that. I think what you said, the leading by example thing, is a very good point because, let the game do the talking. I think that's the way that this team should go about it. I don't think they should worry about, what the mindsets are. I think it should just be let the game do the talking. Let the results show how good we are. And I think, the past couple games, they're starting to figure it out once again. They had lost 5 of their last 7 games. Of course, you had that Bucks win, but then you kind of went back to regressing a little bit when you lost to Detroit. But I think they're figuring it out a little bit. The three-point woes have gone away. They're starting to shoot the ball much better again. I think Brunson being who he's been lately on the court is helping that big time because, quite frankly, you're not going to win many games when your best player is not playing well. That goes for any sport. You're not going to win games when that's happening. And when Brunson wasn't playing well, it became a struggle to win games. Yes, they were getting away with it pretty often because, one, they had an easier schedule, but two, because they have Karl-Anthony Towns. But last night, you didn't have Cat. You didn't have him because he had the thumb issue. You still haven't had Mitchell Robinson. You were playing very shorthanded, right? So Brunson had to come in and step up and really kind of take over a game. Even though the Sixers were missing Joel Embiid, they still had Paul George and Tyrese Maxey. I mean, those are two very good players right there. I know Paul George has been pretty bad this year, but still, those are very good players. As with Brunson, he had to step up, and he did just that. So I'm really happy with that. I think that's a great show of leadership right there. Like what you said, the leading by example stuff. I think that's great right there. I just hope that, down the road we don't have more of those locker room issues where we don't have players calling out others for egos and stuff like that. That's really all I want. I don't want that to be a problem. I'm not blaming Josh Hart. I'm not saying Josh Hart is like a locker room issue, but at the same time, we don't want any of that to even become a thought because then, it's going to get stirred up in the media that the Knicks have locker room problems or this, that, or Josh Hart is a locker room issue, whatever it may be. You don't want any of that. You just want this team to, bond well together like it seemed like they were last year and get as far as you can go with this team. Because I think this team is capable of doing something really special. I think they have their flaws, but I think they're solvable. I don't think they're exactly something that can't be solved at all. I think there are ways you can fix these issues that, we've highlighted over the past several episodes, so I'm not going to sit here and lay them out again. But still, I think we know what this team is capable of. So that's really all I got to say. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of let out any final thoughts on Jalen Brunson, his leadership, and anything else you really can expect from him going forward.
No. Going forward, Jalen Brunson is going to stay in. I think he's back into form. I think that's what we're going to expect to see, anticipate. Karl-Anthony Towns should come back and take his time. He shouldn't come back trying to go, to the wall, trying to put up 25, 35, and 15, stuff like that. Let Jalen Brunson take the coast, coast for a while, get your thumb healthy, get your body right, be back for that. Shout out Justin Edwards. I want to shout out that guy, Philadelphia 76ers. This guy torched us in the fourth quarter. I thought that was going to be the one that seals the game, but apparently he had 25 against Oklahoma City the game before, so watch out for this role player that the Philadelphia 76ers have. These guys can be pretty interesting come playoff time if they're in the right matchup and Joel Embiid's even on one leg and moving a little bit. They'll be interesting matchups. Let's keep our eyes on that.
Yeah, I mean, the Sixers, I credit to them. I mean, playing shorthanded, those guys, they played their heart out. They played hard. I mean, they gave the Knicks a tough fight. They forced overtime against us, and, I didn't think that game should have even been close given the situation that Philly was in, but yeah. I understand we were missing Towns too, so I knew it was going to be tough. It was going to be pretty obvious dogfight, if you will. But, yeah, I'm happy with how Brunson's playing. I want this to continue. I don't want this to be, an up and down trend like it was for, the past couple weeks. I just want this to be a consistently nice flow. Maybe there will be a couple bad games sprinkled in there. I'm expecting that, but I don't want that to become an alarming and consistent trend. I just want what he's been doing the past 3 or 4 games to be the norm, which it was last season, and it has been for most of this season. It's gone under the radar because of how Towns has played, but Brunson has been phenomenal overall this year. It can't go unnoticed. He's easily gonna be an all-star, and I think he should be a starter. That's all I really got to say, though. I don't have much more else to add, so I think this is a good place to wrap the video up. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let us know what you think about Jalen Brunson or his leadership, and as well as the Josh Hart comments in the comment section below, because we would love to hear about it and talk about that with you guys. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course this YouTube page that you were watching the video on. You can follow me and Dalvin's personal Twitter accounts. They're right there above our heads. And we'll see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out.